Her scream tore my heart to shreds. "You insufferable old woman, get out of my life." These words reverberated through the room like a venomous sword, and the moment they reached my ears, my son Andres shattered my world, my patience, everything. The porcelain shattered, and with it, something inside me shattered. I stood there, my food slipping down my pants, in front of more than 20 guests, my hands trembling. Everyone was silent. Some had pity on their faces, others anxious. But no one moved. No one said anything, not even he, my own son, the son I had raised alone since he was 10, when his father passed away, the one for whom I had worked 2 jobs so he would never lack for anything. Now he was looking at me with a stern face, full of contempt. "I'm Rosa, 65 years old, and I've spent my life as a mother, an understanding mother-in-law, and a devoted grandmother. But that night, the person who was supposed to protect me the most decided to humiliate me. As I turned to leave, I picked up my grandchildren, Lucia and Diego, who were peeking from the stairs, their eyes wide open, watching their grandmother being thrown out like garbage. My drive home was a whirlwind of tears and memories. I thought about the first time I met Andres' wife, Paula. Charming, kind, and appreciative. Over time, she had changed. Petty criticisms, excuses to keep me away from the children, accusations that I was a troublemaker. I never thought I'd be able to convince my son. That night, I looked in the mirror. I barely recognized that woman, with her stooped shoulders, stained clothes, and bloodshot eyes. And I wondered when I'd ever thought I deserved this treatment. At that moment, no one, not even me, knew that I would soon discover something that would change everything. A hidden secret that would turn Andres and Paula's lives upside down. I barely slept that night. I closed my eyes and revisited it. The plate fell to the floor, everyone's eyes were on me, and Andres' voice dismissed me as if I were a stranger. Dawn found me with swollen eyes and a shattered spirit. I picked up the phone and called my old friend Clara. She answered quickly, sounding worried. "Rosa, what's going on?" I couldn't take it anymore. I told her, in a flurry of distress, what had happened at the restaurant. "What?" In front of everyone, my own son had yelled at me to stay away, that the house was his, and he never wanted to see me again. "This can't be happening," Clara yelled. "How dare he do this to you?" "I told you, Rosa. Paula has been slowly pushing you away, and now he follows her around as if blind. And what can I do?" I whispered. I was terrified that if I confronted them, they would take my own life away from me forever. They would separate me from my children. Clara paused, then spoke to me, as firmly as ever. "If you keep quiet, you'll lose everything anyway. Think carefully, my friend. No one should be treated like this." I hung up the phone with a heavy heart. I didn't know which way to turn. That weekend, looking for some entertainment, I went to the attic. Among the dusty boxes filled with Andres' trophies, faded photographs, and forgotten memories, I found a manila envelope sealed with old tape. I opened it with trembling hands. It was my husband's will. The handwriting, though years old, was clear. The house had been given to me as my sole heir. I was stunned. Until now, I had believed that the property belonged to Andres, that it was his father's will. But no, the truth was before me. I clutched the document to my chest. A whirlwind of emotions swept through me, pain, anger, and also a spark of hope. Perhaps, after all, I had a way to save myself. And you, who are listening to my story, from which country are you following me? Talk to me, I want to know. Even before that dinner at the restaurant, the wounds had opened. It all started months earlier when Andres had spoken rudely to me about houses. Mom had told me that house, the one I live in with Paula and the kids, is mine. It's built with every brick of my life. And only I have the right to it. Dad left it for me, and the other one, the one you own, is mine too. You can't live there as if nothing had happened. I felt as if my breath had stopped. It felt as if the ground had slipped from under my feet. He was claiming not only the house where he had raised his family, but also the house that had been my refuge for over 40 years. "Do you want to abandon me on the street?" I asked in a trembling voice. "You're worthless," he replied succinctly, without hesitation. I was stunned. The son I had worked day and night for, the The boy I had raised alone after his father's death was looking at me as if I were a burden. And deep down I knew where this venom came from. From Paula. With patience and cunning, she had convinced him that I was worthless, that I should remove myself from their lives. 3, almost 4, tense months passed. The issue of the houses remained silent, as if we all wanted to forget the conflict. I asked only one thing: to meet my grandchildren. Lucia and Diego were the reason for my smile, the spark that kept me going. So when Andres offered dinner to talk things over calmly, I agreed. I clung to the hope that we would finally reconcile. But that night at the restaurant, everything fell apart. What had started as a conversation about children ended with a plate crashing to the floor and my own son yelling at me to get out of his life. That was the deepest wound. Because I'd understood that cruelty doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it comes from the voice of the person you love most. After that insult in the restaurant, I thought the worst was over. I was wrong. Days passed, and I barely slept. I was hurt not only by my son's betrayal, but also by the fact that Paula still harbored feelings for me. And then the unimaginable happened. One afternoon, Andres arrived with a notary. He opened his briefcase and, in a serious tone, handed me some documents. "You have to vacate this house." I was stunned. "What? What are you saying, Andres?" I was trembling, my words faltering, son. He cooled my trembling gaze as if someone had poured water on a burning coal. "Mom," his voice was so cold that it froze my soul, "the house I live in with Paula is mine. Father was supposed to give it to me. It was always mine. And this house, where you live now, is mine too. You can't live in this anymore." My heart broke. For years, I'd quietly accepted that he believed the other house was his because I didn't want to argue. I didn't want to fight my own son, but now he was claiming my house too. It was too much. My legs went weak, but I took a deep breath. Then I remembered the envelope I'd found in the attic, my husband's will, the document that changed everything. I went to the cupboard, took out a copy I'd prepared, and spread it on the table. "Read it." The notary took it first. The silence weighed on him as he carefully scanned the lines. Finally, he looked up. "Here it is clearly established. Both properties were given to you, Mrs. Rosa." Andres snatched the papers and looked at them impatiently. His face grew paler with each paragraph. "No, that can't be right," he muttered, his voice breaking. I watched him silently. I didn't need to shout or argue. The documents spoke for me. And most importantly, the original was well hidden, safe from anyone who might try to take what was rightfully mine. For the first time in a long time, my son had no way of refusing me. The copy of the will had left Andres speechless, but I didn't know then that fate still held another truth that would change everything. A few tense days passed. Andres barely spoke to me, avoiding eye contact as if trying to deny the obvious. Paula, on the other hand, was looking at me with growing resentment. She felt I would explode any moment, and I did. One afternoon, while shopping in town, I overheard a whispered conversation. Two women were whispering behind my back, "Did you hear about Paula? Of course, everyone knows she's seeing that guy from work who always picks her up after work." A shiver ran through me. I walked slowly, without turning around, and confirmed what my ears couldn't believe. They were talking about my daughter-in-law. The rumors soon turned into reality. A friend of Clara's sent me a photo, taken without Paula's notice. She was embracing another man as they entered the hotel. I remained silent, holding that photo. It was as if everything had suddenly fallen into place. Paula's coldness, her obsession with keeping me away from Andres, her hatred disguised as smiles. Everything was part of a selfish plan in which my son was nothing more than a pawn. I couldn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling, repeating it to myself over and over again. How could I tell Gondras? I knew the truth would destroy him, but I also understood that this was my chance, a chance to open his eyes and show him he was fighting the wrong person. With the will safely in place and the proof of Paula's betrayal in my hands, I realized the fight wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. I thought that after the reading of the will, Andres would calm down, but no. A few days later, he returned, this time with Paula. They were determined to pressure me again. "Mom, stop complicating things, Andres said sternly. Having a death warrant in front of you and someone saying, let's end this. Wasn't that easy? Sign these papers and let's end this poison. I looked at him sadly. I knew he'd read the truth, that deep down he knew those houses were mine. But Paula's voice kept echoing in his mind, as if blinding everything. She spoke venomously over him. You have no business here anymore. You better leave. I was silent for a moment. Then, calmly, I placed a photograph on the table. As soon as they entered the hotel, Paula appeared, embracing another man. Andres' face drained of color. His hands, clutching the photograph, were shaking. Paula, what is this? He asked, his voice faltering. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. No excuse. I defended you, Andres said, tears welling in his eyes. I confronted you in front of my mother, and this is how you repaid me. The silence became unbearable. Paula took a step back as Andres collapsed in front of me, covering his face with his hands. I didn't feel a sense of victory. I didn't feel a sense of revenge, but only a mixture of sadness and relief, because at that moment I understood something that perhaps all children should remember. Sometimes people are blinded by pride, cunning, or lies, but the truth always comes out, and when everything else falls apart, the only one who remains, however hurt, however silent, is Mom. That day, resentment didn't win, the truth won, and with it, the hope that my son would return to me, sooner or later. Even after putting the will away in a safe place and holding the proof of Paula's betrayal, I realized the real battle wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. I thought Andres would relent after the will was read, but a few days later, he returned this time with Paula. His face was filled with anger, and his intention was clear, to pressure me into submission. Mom, stop complicating matters now, Andres said in a stern voice. Sign these papers and be done with it. I looked at him silently. I could see in his eyes that he knew the truth, that deep down he knew the house was mine. But Paula's voice echoed in his ears, as if it had clouded his understanding. Paula said venomously, you have no business here anymore. You better leave. I remained silent for a moment, then gently placed a photograph on the table. The photograph clearly showed Paula embracing another man in the hotel lobby. Andres picked up the photograph and his face drained of color. His hands were shaking. Paula, what is this? His voice was breaking. Paula opened her mouth, but no words came out. No excuse, no explanation, nothing. I defended you, Andres' eyes filled with tears. I confronted my mother for you, and you betrayed me like this. The silence in the room fell, heavy and unbearable. Paula stepped back, and instantly Andres collapsed in front of me, hiding his face in his hands. I didn't feel triumph. It didn't feel like revenge either. It was just a strange mixture, sorrow and relief. Because in that moment, I understood the truth every son and daughter should remember. People are often blinded by pride, cunning, and lies. But the truth always comes out. And when everything falls apart, the one who remains, however hurt, however silent, is Mother. That day, it wasn't anger that triumphed, but truth. And with that victory, the hope arose in my heart that my son, sooner or later, after having lost his way, would return to me.